Hot dog!
What do you like to be called?
Justin,
Justin, I'm Bill. It's nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too, man. Thank you so much for making some time. I usually don't do like a formal introduction, but maybe I should. So thank you, everyone who's tuning in. I'm Justin
Yeah.
from Team Oral, and today I get to sit down with the very talented William Salyers. Thank you for stopping by and having a chat with us.
Uh, you don't have to chat me up. I've already agreed to do the interview. But thank you. Those are very kind words.
Well, it's nice to have you stop by, man. I'm thrilled to have you help out the site and just kind of come and hang out, and it's nice to say hey.
Now, you're in Texas, right?
No, I'm in California.
You're in California. I don't know why I thought you were in Texas.
My
Uh,
teammate who I work with is in Texas, and I'm using his account right now, so that might be why.
ah, where in California are you, may I ask?
A few hours north of LA. I'm kind of closer to Sacramento than I would be to Los Angeles.
Gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, well, that makes sense.
Well, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty good, all things considered. I think the world's kind of freaky right now, but I'm hanging in and trying to stay positive and do my little thing without forgetting how hard it is on other people right now.
It's about as much as you can do, right?
Agreed. What about you? How you doing? What are you up to?
I'm just hanging out, looking forward to this, not doing much. Just kind of a chill week, trying to book some performances and do some fun stuff over here. And yeah, that's about it.
Performances as musician or
Yeah, I make music.
that's so cool. That's I'm jealous of people who can do that. When I watch people make music, I feel like a caveman.
I try to. My body's slowly falling apart, but I'm still trying to use it from time to time. So it hasn't failed
Well,
me completely yet.
hate to tell you, but it's just going to get worse.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear.
Yeah, yeah.
I wanted to ask first because this just popped up. Um, I don't know if you know yet if your voice is going to be included, but I hear that your likeness or part of your filmography, voiceography is going to be in the Fortnite game coming up. I was curious on what you thought about that.
Well, I found out just a couple of days ago. Some friends and family reached out to me and said, "Hey, did you know Rigby's going to be in Fortnite?" And I didn't. That's a game I don't play. I'm pretty much not interested if I can't shoot zombies or Nazis. So that's a game that I don't play. But I'm told, the only way that I would get any kind of residual income from it would be if the character spoke with my voice. And I'm told that in Fortnite that's not really a thing. That he's going to be more of a skin than a character. So
Hmm.
so yeah, I mean, I'm thrilled that he's going to be doing Fortnite. It's a huge game, but I'm not going to see any money from it. So
Well, hopefully that'll change, and if not, it'll just bring more eyeballs over to the show, which is
sure.
always good. You know what I mean? Is doing voice acting for video games just another job, or do you play games a lot? I know you just mentioned you like to shoot things and shoot zombies, but like, have you always been a gamer, or is that something you just do, every once in a while kind of thing?
No, I love it. In fact, when I was young and we didn't have much money, so I'm still trying to figure out how this happened. I ended up with an old school Atari 2600. And so that was my first gaming, and I really dug it. And now I'm mostly a Steam PC gamer, but my real jam is FPS RPGs like Outer Worlds and Fallout and Stalker series. Those are the things that I really love. I'm lucky enough to be in a couple of the Fallouts, and I'm proud of that just because those games are so iconic.
Absolutely. What was the last time you actually played a 2600?
Oh, I don't even remember last time I saw a 2600.
I got one here not too long ago, so I've been trying to find some older games and having a little bit of fun with it because I'm an old school gamer myself, so I have a lot
Oh,
of
that's cool.
appreciation for it.
It's so funny now you could you could buy like a device that's that big that emulates every old
Hmm.
every old console that we had, pre like 2010.
There's something for me about the dopamine release and just the nostalgia of having to sit in front of the television and actually use the hardware and having it fail and just to going through the whole process that just you can't get with emulation, but it is crazy to see how far things have come. I mean, when you're looking at a Fallout game compared to Adventure or something like that, it's a world of difference. You know what I mean?
Adventure, man. I haven't heard that reference in a long time. That's the keys and the dragons, right?
I believe so, yeah. I've
Yeah,
only gotten so far with it. I was more of like an action kind of
sure.
gamer, but yeah, that's a pretty fun one.
That's great. I love that. Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
hmm.
I remember playing Pong, you know. That was absolutely fascinating for all of about 90 seconds.
Yeah, the games don't grab too much of your attention span. I find that most Atari games, unlike the original Nintendo, you had to use your imagination so much that I think it falls off with a lot of modern gamers, where they can go back and play the original Nintendo, and that's the pixel art is enough to at least get them interested and like the visual aesthetics of it. But playing a game like Pong, it's definitely you can see kids just are glazed over after a while, and they're
Right.
just like, okay, yeah, I get it. Let me play with
Yeah.
my iPad, you know?
Yeah. I'm a big fan of immersion. Probably one of the most two of the most affecting games I've ever played were what was I thinking of? Well, one was Prey. I don't know if you remember Prey. It came out a few years ago, and it had a very kind of like cool BioShock like twist. Um, but I really like first person. Third person is an immersion breaker for me because I feel like, well, if something happens to that guy 30 feet in front of me, it's not the worst thing in the world.
No, I'm with you. I like a lot of first player shooters as well too. I'm actually playing Evil 8 earlier today, and I remember playing Prey for the Xbox 360, but I know that they used the same name. I don't think it was the same game
There are two Preys. You're right.
developers.
You're
Yeah, I think
you're
it's a
right.
different one. I don't think I've actually played the one that you're referring to, but I hear that that one's actually pretty fun as well too. I actually just played Alien Isolation for Xbox
One of my
One.
that's funny. That was the game I was trying to remember the name of. That was one of the most affecting gaming experiences I've ever had. You play that game in the dark with headphones on,
Mhm.
and if you don't wet yourself, there's something wrong with you.
It's funny if you go back and actually look at some of the Alien games over time, they keep refining it and refining it, but that one did a really good job. And I like the fact that it was very similar to the first film where it was just one alien. It wasn't a
Yes.
billion different ones coming at you, and that intimate, suspenseful. It's just the AI is so smart in that game, and having to
Yeah.
play that, it'll definitely get you to freak out. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really fun.
And that long period in there somewhere right in the middle where like all you can do is hide. You don't have
Mhm.
anything that can hurt the xenomorph. So all you could do is hide and try to avoid it.
Yeah, it forces you to be patient, and then in turn forces that suspense to really build up more because you can play those types of games and push it and kind of force it to be a certain thing, and this one forces you to have to really use what's that like the motion detector and things like that, and
Yes,
they make you be as patient as possible, which I think
that's right.
really does build that suspense. It does a really good job at that. Really, really good. This is more of just a personal question because I've been in these industries in one way, shape, or another. I was reading online that you've been on a stage in one way or another, to be redundant, since you were about like 15. I'm just curious, like, do you feel that the flame is still as bright as it was and the passion is still there? Do you think doing this full time has kind of molded how you look at things and it's a little bit different these days? Or do you still, like, when a script gets on your desk, are you still getting just as excited as day one?
I spent 4 years. No, it's not that long. I spent 4 hours yesterday with friends reading a new play. that I hope we end up producing. I love the theater. I don't think there's anything quite like doing a live performance in front of a live audience. And
Mhm.
I also think it's the best training. If you can do that, if you can be a lead in a play and carry a show for 2 hours or more, um, then everything else is just adjusting to a medium, whether that's camera or microphone or whatever. So I do love it. I still do it as much as possible. Um, I was shocked by how much I never thought anything would replace theater for me as a number one love, but performance capture comes real close because it's equally freeing. It's probably more freeing. I mean, I don't even have to when I'm doing performance capture, like for instance when I played Doc Ock, you know, you've got hundreds of cameras around you. You got a camera right there in front of your face. You got a microphone right there. If I want to turn away from the well, the camera, like I say, you're surrounded by cameras. If I want to turn away and go, man, Justin's driving me crazy. That will all be picked up. They'll see the fine expression on your face. They'll hear the quiet words, and that to me was super empowering. So that is performance capture and live theater are neck and neck for my fave these days.
I can totally get that. Seeing what mocap technology has kind of spiraled
Yeah,
into, I think seeing things like The Last of Us and a few other productions that really capitalize on that, and they bring in seasoned actors, and it just really, it's a it's an interesting niche, but it really does kind of cross a few lines that I think can be satisfying for a number of different people where they just don't have to be a part of it or something. Because you hear a lot of times like, oh yeah, I did this voice for this game or I did something. I've never played it. I've never seen it. I've never whatever. And
right.
then you have these actors who are literally embodying the characters in every way, shape, or form, down to, you know, raising their eyebrows, and that's getting picked up. It's pretty insane these days how in depth that work has gotten, you know.
That's right. And I was recently with friends who had worked on the Spider-Man game, people who knew this industry really well. They were saying that it just still blows my. I mean, still don't understand how it will work, but they say that like we are right on the cusp of no suits, no markers, no makeup. You just show up and play pretend, and they take that and make it look any way they want. Put whatever costume on you, and that's just crazy to me. I saw part of it. I've only done a couple of things in terms of mocap, but the first time I was ever scanned, which was for Spider-Man, I had to go to San Diego, spend the night there, and then spend the following day in a futuristic pod full of cameras
Hmm.
doing all of these different facial expressions so that they could record those and use them. And the next time I did it, which was not that much later, the scanning I think took like 15 minutes. So it's that is a really hot off the presses technology, and it's moving really fast. I think I used to work in tech before I started. I had to quit doing tech support because I got too busy voice acting. But I remember two predictions I made back in that time. Was I said um, scheduled TV shows, the way we think of them now, are going to go away. There's just going to be an availability date, and we will download it. I was pretty close. I mean, you don't have to download something to stream,
Mhm.
but I was pretty close on that one. And then the other thing I said is the day is going to come when you buy an experience on some medium, whether it's a disc or a massive download or something, and then you'll be able to decide whether you want to watch it, play it, or be in it. And I think that's around the corner.
It's getting pretty close. I think I just saw something. I'm not a gigantic Marvel fan, but I did see some video online where Robert Downey Jr. was talking about like the production for Iron Man 1 and everything they had to do with him in the suit, and then down to the new ones where they're literally just putting a few things on his face, and they're like, "That's it.
Yes,
That's all you need to do." And it really just show within a decade of time how much that medium has grown.
that's
So it's
right.
going to get even more intense as time goes on, no doubt.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It'll be really interesting to be able to have that choice to be able to sit back, which is funny. We mentioned The Last of Us, and I've gotten like utterly obsessed with the second game. And it's funny because right now it's like I'm watching the show, playing the game, and also reading the script, which I'm then going back and watching the game as I'm reading the script as well too. And it's like you have all these mediums in front of you. How long will it take until they're all completely integrated and you can choose? And that could be a really fun experience, especially if it is this an immersive world and you know what I mean, like a really fleshed out idea like that would be a lot better. Also, it would be really crazy for something like a horror movie or something of the
Oh
sort.
my
You know what I
God.
mean?
Yeah. 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 Cue the first lawsuit because someone got scared to death living in
Oh,
a.
jeez. Yeah. Um, I read that you went to art college, but I couldn't find out what was your major.
I went to College of Santa Fe in New Mexico for theater. I studied
Hmm.
theater. And it's funny because when I started theater, I'm of an age. I was born in a small town and fell in love with plays, doing school plays and community theater.
Hmm.
And it was that town was so small and so rural at that time that the first makeup I acted in was literally grease paint. And I remember like what they call carbon arc spotlights, that it was like all the technology was not that different from the technology of the 19th century. And so in that time, I've seen it go from that to, the performance capture that we're talking about. Um, but College of Santa Fe, which sadly doesn't exist anymore, was a great training ground, and they trained you to be a professional. Now, at that time, they were training you to be a professional stage actor, but like I said, I think it's all sort of. Um, I think theater is boot camp for acting, and if you can do that, you can do the other stuff as well. So I was very pleased with the training that I got at Santa Fe.
Are you doing any other on-screen work these days, or is it usually trying to do something like Broadway or just voice acting specifically?
Well, we live in a time when I think if you want to try to make your living as an actor, you have to be pretty agnostic about how you do it. Like sometimes you'll hear young actors, young people in training, aspiring actors say, "Well, I only want to do drama, or only want to do comedy, or I only want to do this or I want to do that." Uh, that's just not realistic. You're going to do what they pay you to do if you want to be a professional. If you want to be a hobbyist, you can pick and choose. But I've done I've done TV. I mean, on camera. I've narrated books. I've done stage. I do a lot of Comic Cons now. You've got to be open to doing different kinds of work. I didn't start out to be a voiceover actor,
Hmm.
and in fact, there was a time in my life much earlier when I could have pursued it, and instead I told myself it wasn't what I did. And now I'm like, damn, I wish I had actively moved toward that earlier because I really love it. I don't do so much. I'm not really pursuing on camera work. It's one of the dangers of being a successful voice actor is that it's there's so much less uh, bullshit that goes into your work when you could just stand up in front of a mic and perform the script in front of you. There's something so freeing about it, and it can really spoil you for getting up at 5 in the morning and going and sitting in a trailer for 4 hours while they shoot the pretty people. And my joke that I like to make is that when in my little short on-camera career, I played two
Mhm.
roles: objection, Your Honor, and 10cc stat. And you know, it's not that interesting. Um, if you can hang in and get past that point and start getting meaningful characters,
Mhm.
I think it probably can be interesting. But I never made that transition, so I was always some sort of expository character, that moved the story forward but wasn't intrinsically interesting.
Yeah,
And it's
hospital patient B or something of the
Yeah,
sort, you know?
totally. I
Yeah.
mean, that's funny you mentioned that. There was a new medical show called geez, it's been so long. It was set in Seattle, which is where I lived at the time. Medicine Ball. It's called Medicine Ball. You
Hmm.
haven't heard of it, and neither has anyone else.
Then, what happens in the ER of this hospital
If we don't relieve the pressure on his heart, he'll die.
isn't half as exciting
Broken heart. I've had a few of those.
as what goes on behind closed doors. Medicine Ball after Melrose Place, Monday on Fox.
It was not a bad show, but it had the bad luck to come out like the same time Chicago Hope did, and ER, and so I think it lasted like one or two seasons. But I was on the first episode of that, and the character was a great character. He's this, and at the time I was this young, skinny dude who seems to be tweaking out, and they bring him in, and he grabs a scalpel off a tray and threatens everybody in the ER, and one of the lead, the very pretty female lead, like picks up a scalpel and off another tray and says, I know seven different places where I can use this on you and you'll be dead in 30 seconds. How many do you know? And he panics and throws down his weapon and runs away. Well, in the script, he was supposed to come back at the end of the show, and you find out that he's not actually a drug addict. He was a diabetic who was having a diabetic crisis. He had missed his. He was homeless and he had missed his insulin, so he was in a
He's freaking out.
episode. He was freaking out,
Yeah.
and so we shot the first part, and it went well. And I went back to my trailer and was waiting, and I got an AD came and said, "Yeah, we're just going to run out of time on the episode, so they're going to cut your last scene." And so, if you think about it from a purely like rational standpoint, they're like, well, people will just think that he was a tweaker and she was a badass, and,
Hmm.
and that's good enough. It so happened that this day, the shooting was on my birthday, and so I got cut from the show on my birthday, but I just went out and started drinking early. But it was that's just it's such a typical that TV story is not uncommon at all,
Hmm.
as are the stories from so many friends of mine who uh, just got cut and didn't appear in something at all. So the nice thing is, if you're doing VO, your lines are probably going to make it into the project, and if they're not, at least you didn't spend the entire day doing it.
That's one hell of a birthday. Show up to work, you're all excited, everything's going great, and then it's like, hey, we're gonna kill you off. Now you can just spend the rest of the night at the bar. You're just like, oh,
Yeah,
like, what a
exactly. And I
whirlwind of
did.
emotions, you know?
Yeah, it's true. But that was kind of so. I never, I get on myself as well. Like you should go back to pursuing on camera. You should go back to pursuing on camera. It's just really hard to make yourself do that. And I'm really happy with where I am right now. So I wouldn't turn it down if it came to me,
Mhm.
but I'm also not gonna kill myself pursuing it.
You know, I'm gonna dig as hard as I possibly can to get a clip from this Medicine Ball show. I'm looking it up right now, and I've never heard this before. Probably because of, just like you said, it was probably overshadowed by some of these other monster shows that came out at that time that became these, critically acclaimed, huge Emmy award winning shows. Um, but I'm definitely gonna have to look for that.
Well, let me help you out. I still remember the episode was called "The Wizard of Bras."
That's episode 2, The Wizard of
Oh, is it two?
Braz.
It's two.
Yeah.
So there was
Okay.
so it was the second episode. And I was on. You probably have you ever heard of Northern Exposure?
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
I was on that a couple of times. I played. I was on that a couple of times that they were far enough apart that I played two different characters, and that was back in the day when they used to do that. Now, if you appear on a TV show, they're like, "Well, we've already used him, so we can't use him again." But you go back to like the '70s, and TV shows were almost like theater companies. They had the same people playing different characters over and over and over again, and I kind of miss that. That imaginative use of performers.
Yeah, I mean they've got the pick of the litter these days. I haven't seen Northern Exposure in a long time. I am an older guy, so I've seen some of these. You were talking about going to school and seeing just how technology and how these different avenues have just spawned and grown and gone through so many different phases over time. And I'm lucky to be in that age bracket as well too. And it's funny. I feel for kids that are born these days who don't have that same appreciation. And I think if I was born a little bit earlier, my appreciation would also be kind of altered. And I think I'm in this like sweet spot that I can really enjoy both of it and seeing it both kind of grow. Man, it's been a while since I've seen Northern Exposure. I always loved their DVDs though. They came in like a protective I think it was like a life jacket or something like that.
Yes.
Those were hilarious. I remember those working at Blockbuster back in the day and having those come in. I was like, oh man, this is great. Like those were awesome.
It fell victim to something that has happened to other shows, which is really fascinating to me from a legal standpoint. They used a lot of really cool music, but they didn't license that music in perpetuity.
Ooh, yeah. So if they didn't have the license after that, they can't air anything. And if the people who own it are strong holding it, they're basically their hands are tied, which is
That's right.
As a musician, I get it and I understand it.
Sure.
But I also, I don't know. I've had people license my own music, which I'm like happy to do and thrilled,
great.
and it's awesome. But yeah, when they're using gigantic songs and they're just like, to use this one song will be more than our residuals will be for the next decade. It's just how can we justify this at all whatsoever?
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's right. I do know that apparently it's streaming again on Amazon, and I don't know how they solved that problem. Whether they went in, it's probably easier than it used to be to replace that stuff. It's just because of technology. I don't know if that's what they did or if they did some kind of heroic bargaining with rights holders or what, but I think it is back now.
I wonder if the record label is like a subsidy of Amazon these days
Smart.
or something like that, so that they would be able to be like, well, just call Linda over at whatever and we'll get the okay because it doesn't matter. MGM is part of us anyway, so who cares?
That's so smart.
Which that's happened like a number of times. And they're so big with their productions house this day in this day and age that could possibly be something, but who knows?
Yeah.
This is where we'll cut in from the previous footage of me just holding my head like
That's funny. Now I'm hearing you through my holiday glasses, which makes sense. Okay, but let me try changing.
I'm in your head, Bill.
I don't even know if I'm probably not wearing the same clothes or anything, so it's not going to be slick.
I'm not. I'm wearing one of my Starburn shirts. I don't even know where to start, but since we could keep some of the previous interview, we should just start by naming the elephant in the room, which first off, I pulled out my lower back yesterday. So I'm going to try my damnedest to be jovial and nice, even though it feels like I'm sitting on a knife right now. So forgive me if I'm just a little like zoning out due to a lot of pain. But to point out the elephant in the room, I just have to say, it's taken a while to get our schedules together to even make this a reality. Yeah. And then of course, Zoom just freaks out. We lose a 2-hour great conversation. We were able to save some of it, but I just want to say again, as I've already said it to you a bunch, thank you so much for joining us again and talking again.
Sure.
That's very cool of you to do. It's something you don't have to do. I'm obviously going to pay you a whole bunch of money for your time because your time is valuable. No, but seriously, I really, really do appreciate it. We can't say that enough. So thank you for being very cool.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I know the point was to actually create something that you could share. So if we didn't achieve that, we'll have to do more.
Well, I think so. And I know that I walked away from it. Like I said to you, I was like, well, I enjoyed the conversation. So I know that the time was at least worthwhile, you know, and even if we can't hit all the same beats that we did last time, I've still got a bunch of questions. I've tried to spice it up a little bit, so I'm not just asking you the same things over and over. So hopefully we got some better stuff this time around. But I am glad that at least we saved the first 30 minutes, because when I look at my notes over here, we were able to save such topics as being featured in Fortnite, talking about some video games, your love for Alien Isolation, talking about if the candle's still burning for acting these days, our conversation about Mocap, The Last of Us, your predictions about the future and I guess media and forms of media consumption. So we got a whole bunch. We even got the medicine ball conversation too, which let's just start there, because I want to touch down on a few different things. But we knew that we had to scramble and get a whole bunch of questions together. And the one thing I wanted to do was to look into medicine ball, because you told us that, you know, about your time there and how the part was, you know, done. And it led me to want to bring up two things. Number one, with a primetime television slot at 8 p.m. 7 Central that immediately followed Melrose Place on Fox, how come Medicine Ball wasn't the highest rated medical-based show of all time?
Yeah, I don't know. I had two experiences with Medicine Ball. I was called in. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm lying to you. I had two experiences with Northern Exposure. Medicine Ball was just the one thing. But you know, when I worked on it, I was impressed with the other cast members. The team seemed to move well and quickly. The hospital was this amazing set that was that they recreated on an old naval base. And once you walked through the doors of the old naval base, you were in a hospital pretty much until you rounded the corner and everything was like plywood and Hollywood flats. So I don't know, you know, it felt to me like it should have been successful. The writing was sharp and clever. The performances were winning. I do know that the woman who played the lead, who was very good, I don't think she's been in acting for a while. So she may have been a determining factor. But you know, it had some recognizable faces in it, like Donald Logue was in it, and yeah, I don't know. You know, that's the thing, is it's like I always tell the kids that acting is like gold mining. You know, you strike a vein and you're thrilled, and the only thing that you know for sure is that vein is going to play out. You're not going to just dig that same gold for the rest of your life. And sometimes, you know, they got further than a pilot, so that's better than a lot of shows do. So there was that, at least.
I asked the joke almost in a comedic sense, because of Fox's notorious bad promotion and so many shows just getting the can. I mean, there's that infamous David Cross speech from the behind the scenes of Arrested Development, where he was like just bitching and just so fed up.
I got an idea for what you can do. Why don't you fucking fire your complete marketing team, all right? Get a new one in there, knows how to market a show that won 5 motherfucking Emmys, Golden Globes, SAG Awards, WGA Awards, DGA Awards, Producers Guild Awards, Critics Top 10 lists. You know, if you can't market that kind of show and get better ratings, then maybe the problem doesn't lie here. Maybe it lies with marketing. Good night.
Good night. Thank you very much.
But when I wrote that joke, I was almost like kind of like giggling to myself about it, for lack of a better term. I then like thought about it, and it was funny because one of your other shows, which was Strong Medicine, like that show went on for a ton of seasons, and there were a ton of these medical based shows because of the popularity of ER and a few other ones where I was just like, I wonder why that didn't get picked up. And of course, there's so many different factors that you may be aware of, may not, and so many things that are going on behind the scenes, like who knows. But we did actually uncover something that was interesting, because we were searching high and low for your episode, because I was like, oh man, we got to find out how they edited it down, because like you said, it was first supposed to be this character, but then they just like made you something else and just kind of cut off the character. So I was like, man, we got to find this. And apparently it's lost media. Like you can't find this anywhere. We actually reached out to one of the writers of the show, and he was like, I'm super blessed that you even like wanted to even find out anything about this show. He was like, I don't have anything, but that's so cool. He's like, I never hear about the show anymore. But my teammate, Nick, actually found a Wikipedia page that said that there was actually a court case revolving around this show where basically, in short, one of the actors took SAG to court about certain guidelines with the show, or like they say it was over a union security clause. And I guess there was like a huge thing. Now, the courts sided with SAG. I guess they didn't think that they did anything wrong, but we always wonder if that like actually held up the show in some ways. And one reason why maybe it wasn't aired in syndication or something, where they're just like, we have to put a kibosh on this. So we don't know, but I'll send you this link after we talk. And I just thought if you've never heard of that before, you might find that interesting, because we were both kind of like, whoa, what is this?
I became both a sadder and happier actor when I came to understand that reason has very little to do with it. So, it's when I was younger and I would be like, I just have to up my game and improve my work, and then I'm going to blow up, and everything's going to start working. It doesn't work like that. It's like, you have to bring a strong game, and you have to be ready to do the work. And then you have to hope that the 99% of the things that you don't have any control over actually works out too. And Medicine Ball is the example of that not happening. There was a funny little tease that I'll always wonder what it meant. When I did Medicine Ball, I was working with, the director was Robbie Benson, and on a break, he said something like, we're thinking about, to me, directly to me, we're thinking about, no, never mind. and I will always wonder how close I came to maybe becoming a recurring or something for that show. But you just have to worry about what you have control over and let the rest go. At least that's my experience.
There is that phrase in comedy that like good comedy always rises to the top. And me being a musician, I've always heard that from so many people where they're like, well, if it's a good song, people will hear it. And it's just like, no, they won't.
No.
And even if you're a great comedian, it doesn't mean that your jokes are always going to land. And there's so many other avenues that have to work. That's why I like that term, lightning in a bottle, because it's literally what has to happen for these things to actually fall through. And you could work on your craft and do so much and bend over backwards just to find out that it's like, well, for lack of a better way of saying it, like you don't look a certain way. Your tits aren't big enough.
Right.
This producer has a bet with somebody else, and that's going to determine what happens with this show. Like so many other ridiculous things where it's just like, that stinks, which, again, we spoke about our last time, me being in school, when I had that professor that told me, if you're going to go into music, you need to know that I write music for you to shop and buy groceries. I wish that they would say that across the board to a lot of thespians or upcoming comedians or musicians, where it's just like, listen, please work on your craft. Love it and do as much as you can. But also remember that gem where it's like, if you want to act. Treat the audition like that. That's where you're going to act. Put your all into that. And when you walk out, it is what it is. You just did the thing you wanted to do. You are a success. You did it. If something else comes from it, and that, like you said, that vein produces a little bit more gold, okay, cool. But it's like, I gave it my all. I did it. Got to walk away and not look at it all as rejection, but more as the experience of actually doing it and being happy with just that, because it's a crapshoot to see like where it goes. You know what I mean? It really, really can be. How silly is it when you look back and you look at one of your first film roles, if not your first film role, in the movie, the critically acclaimed Bedazzled movie. I'm just curious if you ever sit back and laugh that your first film role was an acting role, but had a voiceover done over your character, and now you are a voice actor who literally does that to other people for a living now.
You still don't believe me, do you?
Of course not. First of all, you look nothing like the devil.
Oh, really? I suppose I could have gone this way. But it's so trick or treat.
It's true.
It's funny. I never thought of it that way. You know, I knew that that character was never going to speak with my voice because it's really played by Elizabeth Hurley, who was, by the way, delightful. She had she was technically off, and she still came to the set to watch that bit. And even though this was a million years ago, you know, Harold Ramis and the DP had it set up so basically they could preview the special effect of me turning into her in real time right after the shot was done. And so I got to see that happen. But you know, I tried to kind of imitate her cadence and her dialect so that when she voiced over it, it would look natural. I don't know if it made a difference, but you know, looking back on that, I was like, oh well, I was still using the technical skills of a voice actor even then, because I was trying to basically make myself matchable, you know. But that is, I had done other movies before that. That was the first film that I did here in LA. But when I was in Seattle, I was in a movie of the week called Pandora's Clock, where I played an air traffic controller in Heathrow. I was in something called The Marla Hanson Story, where I was an audition coordinator for. It was based on a true story about a model who was disfigured by her boyfriend. And I did. Jeff Probst did a. I knew Jeff Probst in Seattle before he blew up doing Survivor, and he did an independent film called Trust Me that I don't think he's terribly proud of anymore. But that was probably my first big feature role, was in Jeff's film. So there were other camera appearances out there, and as far as Bedazzled goes, I think the classic, the original did not need a remake. You know, when you have Dudley Moore and Peter Cook in a film, I think you're good to go. I don't think you need to replace those people with Brendan Fraser and Elizabeth Hurley. But you know, apparently it was somewhat popular, so that's great.
Hey, got you on screen for a couple seconds, and is a nice one to add to the IMDb.
Yeah,
I had to bring this for a little show and tell to let you know that I'm not a complete liar.
Oh my gosh!
So I do actually own one.
That's great, man. Do you have any idea what that's worth? Because I'm curious.
Honestly, it's not worth anything, and you would think that ColecoVision and television, Atari, all these things, because they're so old, are huge. At one point in time, they were of interest, but I think that all of the people who played them are now old enough. And I think that it takes too much of imagination for these games to still hit well, that they don't hold their value as much, where people are just kind of like, yeah, it's just whatever. And like some people will still sell them, but it's not worth much. I mean, my buddy got this at a garage sale for like $30 and sent it to me.
Oh, wow.
So I was just like, okay, cool, whatever.
Yeah, you make a keen point about imagination. You know, it broke my heart when my kid was like, "Oh, the modern Star Wars movies are so much better," and I was like, "Yeah, but dude, when they blew up the Death Star, they really blew up the Death Star." And he's like, "Yeah, no, that the CGI makes all the difference for him." And I don't know. It's I think it's kind of sad because that means that there's a generation of people that can't appreciate some really great art simply because the special effects are dated. You know.
I got into acting and tried to pursue it as long as I could until I kind of shifted towards music, which I always want to get back into some form of acting. Maybe if an opportunity comes knocking, I would give it a try, but that won't happen. I got to do the knocking. Nevertheless, I love Tom Savini, George Romero films, The Godfather of Gore. I loved practical effects. Always loved it. I mean, I collect for Moral Orel. It's something that I really have appreciation for, and it's really sad to see them cutting so many corners, even to right now. That is getting so bad. I don't know if you saw, but there's a new Nick, correct my name. What is it? Darren Arfkowski.
Darren Aronofsky.
Yeah, he has a
Darren
brand new
Aronofsky.
movie that is completely AI that has SAG actors doing the voice work for it, and it's just like it's so gross to see authentic, almost like guerrilla filmmaking and using all these tricks and everything that is just made movies so great. And even if you had to use the imagination, it's just the appreciation for the craft and just watch it over this period of time just become something completely different, and people conforming to it as well too. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I think CGI is cool and it's helped a whole bunch of films and there is a place for it. And I also think that practical stuff doesn't have to completely go away. I think if you look at something like Alien Romulus that still did both of it and did it both well, it's like, oh, this is great. You know what I mean? Like there is still a place for all this. But then now we're seeing directors just being like, nah, this is easier when the bottom dollar matters the most. It really stinks to see. And I think that goes across the board where if it's easier and it's more flashy in many different ways, it's going to hit a lot more. And it doesn't mean that Pitfall for Atari isn't good. It's still good. It still has its merits, but it's gonna, when you get so saturated with all these changes and all this other stuff, it's just kind of like, why? Why do I need it? There's so much more stuff out there. And I can understand how people would just go along with it. Me, from where I'm at, I don't know. I can't watch like certain horror movies because I know it's all fake. And I'm like, I want to see what Tom Savini did. I want to see what these directors did. I actually want to see real people reading real dialogue, not CGI actors doing dialogue. It's a really weird time. But I could ramble about that for forever, but you mentioned your son, so I should ask. We read online that your voice of Rigby was heavily influenced on your son, or by your son. Is that true?
Yeah, probably less the voice itself than the attitude. There was a time when I was playing Rigby that Ian was a teenager, and so it would come out. Kids. Kids are seldom authentic when they say that they're sorry for doing something that they're not really sorry for. So, when he would do something that we, his mom or I thought were inappropriate, we call him on it. He would say, "Sorry," which is, the opposite of sorry. And so I direct lifted that from him for Rigby because, it sounded, the word was so right and the attitude was so wrong. And I was like, that's perfect. So I use stuff like that. Rigby is very much ego and id driven. And so, using a younger person with a less developed prefrontal cortex to sort of inspire some of that worked really well for me.
Speaking of the regular show and fathers, we had an internet question that said, since the show is returning, will you be voicing Rigby's dad again?
That's a great question, and one that many lawyers prevent me from answering on any level, because we don't know anything about the series yet out there in the real world. So what I will say is this: if you like the original show, you're gonna like what they're doing now.
So you'll
And
be doing voices in the regular show, whatever they may
behind
be.
me. That's good. That was a good swing. I appreciate the attempt, and yeah, we'll see is what I'll say about that.
I read that when you record audio for the regular show, you always record as a group in like a large room. Did the show was the show always like that? Like when you showed up, it was all everyone gets in here and there's 10 mics sitting around, or was it more traditional where it's isolated and then you guys move to that? Because I know some shows still do isolation, and then other shows it's just playtime and it's just like everyone in the room, let's just go at it and have fun.
It's much more the latter. We JG always wanted us to be in the booth whenever possible, and so that we had some pretty notable guest stars on, and they couldn't always be there for the group records, or I'm assuming also they might have just felt like it would expose them too much to fangirling from the rest of us if they were there. So there were people that needed to record separately. Although a lot of great people did come in, Carl Weathers came in, and George Takei came in, and so I got to meet those people. JG always liked to have us in the booth, so much so that when I was doing a stage play in Portland, Oregon, he actually, my only day off was Monday, and every Monday that happened to also be the day that we recorded regular shows. So every day off from the play, I flew back to LA and was in the booth recording a regular show. And I think JG was right about it making a huge difference, because you can even hear sometimes, and I've pointed this out when watching TV with my wife, you could hear sometimes in live action that they weren't in the room at the same time, because someone will say something and the person replying to them will say words that make sense, but in a phrasing or emphasis that doesn't match the cue that they were handed, right? And so sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes, it's actor schedules, whatever. But JG liked to always have us in the booth whenever possible, and it vastly added to the esprit de corps and to the just the general vibe of the show. Unlike 99% of the time when you're watching when you're playing a video game, you're hearing someone who recorded in a booth by themselves, whether it's a scene or not, because that's just the way that's done.
Was the process of doing Close Enough pretty much similar as a regular show? They approached
it was very similar. We recorded that in a different studio, but and I was, to be clear, I was not a regular on that series, so I was only in there a few times, but it was very much the same thing. It was very much I remember one of the episodes that I did for Close Enough, I had to keep stepping away from the mic because what the other performers were doing was so hilarious to me that I was afraid, even my attempts to stifle my laughter were going to come across on the mic, so I would step away. It was a blast, we were working with some very, very, in both shows, very funny people.
Speaking of voice acting in video games, admittingly, I haven't owned a PlayStation since the PlayStation 2. I got an Xbox 360 and played Xbox for a long time, but I became this year actually, which I'm extremely late to the party, became utterly obsessed with The Last of Us. So I have a PS4 here now, and you very graciously, is that the right word? I think, sent over your video clips from your reel, and I was I was blown away at like how many different games, but how many different genres it bounced around. And even if I haven't played all the games firsthand, I'm very familiar with a lot of the games that were there. And then as I was looking for some additional, and I'll get to the point here in a second, when I was looking for additional questions to ask, I stumbled onto Spider-Man from 2018, and I started looking into it more. And I'm familiar with the game. I was seeing advertised, but I've never played it before. I never had the opportunity to play it. And then I stumbled on the fact that you were nominated for your role in the game, and I was like, "Huh, that's interesting." That totally flew past my radar with doing all this homework, and I sat down and I watched all the cinematic pieces of that game. That's about as much time as I had this week to go through it, and I was like, "This is exceptional." I was like, "This is really really cool," and I was like, "That's awesome that he was nominated for this. This is great." And it made me want to ask. As we get to the point, it made me want to ask: was the voice acting for that game also isolated? Because it really did seem like that was something that was in the same room. Like it seemed like it was very personal. And then I started looking into it more, and I was like, wait, they did a bunch of mocap. Wait a second. His character kind of looks like him a lot too. So I started looking a lot more, and I was like, I'm not seeing Bill in any of these mocap costumes. Like, how much were you embedded into this character? Forgive my ignorance here, but like, I'm curious, how was the voice acting done? Was it all in the same room, like we were speaking about? And then like, how much of that motion capture were you able to do that they embedded into the game?
Almost all of it. It was, for me, it was very similar to the experiences that you may have heard, like when Andy Serkis did The Hobbit, and played Gollum. It was like that. We were in full motion capture suits, had the helmets on, the cameras right here, and the hundreds of cameras around us. And the only parts of that gig that were voice only were things like the final boss fight and stuff like that, where like you literally couldn't, your body would be torn apart if you tried to do the things that they were doing. And so that was stuff like that was voice only. But even like fighting on the side of the building when Yuri and I were doing the early parts of the fight between Spider-Man and Doc Ock, that was all fully performed. Everything in the lab was all fully performed. And so it was wonderful. It was like playing pretend. It was, because you're surrounded by cameras, you don't really even have to worry about where you're looking. You just play the scene with your scene partner, and it comes across like that, or at least it did for that project, because there were a lot of really talented people working on it. I'm still, something that cheeses me to this day is that IMDb does not recognize performance capture as a separate category. IMDb being the Internet Movie Database, where people go to look at your credits. You do something like that, you act out Doc Ock, or in Yuri's case, Peter Parker, and IMDb says it was voice acting. And it's voice acting in the same way that when you watch a movie, those people are voice acting. Yeah, you use your voice, but you're also using your full body.
Yeah, that is a bit baffling that it wouldn't put that in its own kind of category, because it is a totally different beast. And now knowing that you did do all of that in there, which if you do have any photos of yourself, I should send them over, because I'll place one here. But
sure.
That's awesome. And I could see how, like, thinking about all the cinema that I watched and how immersive it is, and how much you put yourself into that character, I can see why it was nominated. And I'm glad that people recognized it, because you can feel it, you can see it, you can see that role actually being put in there, which that is something completely different, and you have to really put a lot of yourself into it. And it's not that you can't get something that human or personal or something in a booth by itself, but you could tell that there's something more. You know what I mean? I think that is something that definitely should be recognized for everything that goes into it, because I mean they're literally capturing the physicality, the eye movements, the everything that goes into it. It's not just being in a booth saying, "Hi, I'm Sonic," you know what I mean, or something of the sort. You know?
That's
It
right.
is different, you know.
It was very. Hang on. Um, yeah, I already knew Yuri at that point. We had belonged to the same theater company here in LA, and I had socialized with him, and he had been on regular show. And so he was somebody that I already had a deep affection for. And so that fit quite naturally into that storyline of Doc Ock and of Otto and Peter. And I was fortunate in that they decided that my appearance worked well for that character. There were other people. Basically, the technology is such that they can have an actor like me or someone else do a full performance and then essentially face map an entirely different person and juxtapose that face onto this person's performance, so that it is their performance, it's completely their performance, but it doesn't look like them. And when I asked at one point why they didn't feel the need to do that for me, they said something along the lines of, my face gives good data. So I don't know what that means, but you know, good, because it is nice to know. I have on rare occasion been recognized from the game, which is kind of trippy.
It is striking. And I was looking at other pictures of Doc Ock, and I was like, did they just use his likeness completely? Is this just so close because you have so many striking similarities from a physical standpoint? And I was just like, this is interesting. And that's when I started looking. I was like, I want to see if there's an actual photo out there of him with something on his face, like they actually took it. So I'm surprised and delighted to hear that. That's very, very cool. That is a very, very cool thing, because that is literally you in every way, shape, or form. And that is something really, really cool to have. You know what I mean?
It wasn't in real life, what the camera was saying was not particularly flattering. I told people I look like a magic 8-ball with measles, but in terms of it translating to the game, I thought it went pretty well. And they had a cinematic screening of the game at Insomniac after we wrapped, and what they did was they took all the cutscenes and interposed just enough gameplay to connect them. And honestly, it was one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen. You know, it really played well, and I got a big kick out of it. I think other people on YouTube have done stuff like that too, where you can just basically watch it as a movie. Mm-hmm. I don't have a PlayStation, and I've never played it, but I know that there's a lot of material out there, a lot of video.
Yeah, and it's just watching that by itself, I was like, this is great. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
It really has a lot of like heart to it. It has a lot of drama to it. And I've played a bunch of other Marvel games that I wouldn't say the same thing about it. And I can understand why the game was critically acclaimed, even outside of its gameplay. Like, and I was really surprised to see that. Delightfully surprised. I thought it was great. It was really, really cool.
Thank you.
All right, so let's do more of a deeper dive, and this is a little bit of me being silly, but also something that I found to be funny, and it will lead us to a few other questions that I have here. So before we were talking about Northern Exposure, and I wanted to try to find some information on that, but as we were talking about, the show is a little bit older, so that was tough, but I did find something from it, which is cool. And in season 6, episode 17 of Northern Exposure, you play Shakespeare. It's extremely unfortunate that your role is cut short due to being in a dream sequence where you're shot almost instantly as the scene starts. While a soldier runs up to you to give you a cigarette and says, "Talk to me," your last words are, "'Tis a far, far better thing I do than you die." This is a Charles Dickens quote. So naturally, my question is, what brand cigarette did the soldier give you in your last moments?
Yeah, that was John Corbett. Great guy to work with. John he came up with that idea. He said, how would you feel if I put a cigarette in your mouth in the last, as you're dying? I said, I think that sounds great. And so I'm sure it was nasty. I'm sure it came out of whatever cheap prop cabinet that they kept stuff like that in. But yeah, I thought that was a great, and John was excited about that scene because it's a dream sequence and it's goofy, and the character, the regular character Chris that John played on the show is supposedly taking his a master's course in literature by extension course. So he is doing it all through well, at that time it would have been mail, and so he's under a lot of pressure, and he has this nightmare where he is in a bombed out World War II villa with people like Shakespeare and Beethoven. I don't know why Beethoven was there, but he was, and Edgar Allan Poe, and so yeah, they that was one of the more fun things I got to do. At the time, I had long hair because I was doing I guess I could cut that short and say at the time I had hair, but at the time I had long hair because I was doing a play where it was useful to me, and it's one of the few times I walked into an audition. I looked around the room and I thought, well, if I don't really wreck this audition, I think this is going to be me, and it was. So it was a lot of fun.
All joking about the cigarette comment aside, I thought it was hilarious when I saw it because you have such a background in theater that I was like, how funny is it that he's playing Shakespeare in this thing? And like, do you remember when they approached you for the role where they just like, you can play Shakespeare, and you're like, oh dude, I got this. Like, I've done this before kind of thing. Or was it like, did that hit you in almost a comical way that it's like, I'm now playing Shakespeare in this film, but it's just like an odd version of Shakespeare. Like my time reading Shakespeare, this is how it's going to translate. Like there had to have been some sort of silly parallel there to some way.
Yeah, at the time, it's been years since I've done any Shakespeare on stage. I really love it. The language is just delightful to say, and because it's verse, it's actually easier to memorize than a lot of other stuff. But I guess it was such an unusual take on the character. I mean, there I was, and I was trying to think. I think they had me in a doublet and World War II trousers, and like a cartridge bandolier, and I had like a World War II rifle. So it was very anachronistic. So it almost felt like I was playing something entirely different, which of course I was. It wasn't really Shakespeare. It was Chris's nightmare version of Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. One of the things that stands out from that experience was they were starting to fit me with a squib because Shakespeare gets shot in the scene, and a squib, of course, is a small charge that they put on your body, and when they detonate it, it looks like you've been hit with something. And they were in the middle of setting that up, and I was a little nervous about it because I'd never had it done before. And as they were setting it up, an assistant director walked by and was like, "What are you doing?" And the wardrobe person was like, or special effects was like, "We're putting a squib on him." And he was like, "This is Northern Exposure. We don't do that." And so what they did instead, I'm coming out of a doorway, and they had charges on either side of the doorway that they could trigger, so it looks like I'm being raked with gunfire. And I just fell backwards, and it worked fine. That's funny. I don't know if they'd let me do that now. That might have been considered a stunt, but I'm glad I got to do it.
It was a delightful thing to sit back and watch that. I was surprised that was the character of all people you would play. Speaking of having such a huge theater background, I personally hated musicals. There were some musicals that I didn't have a problem with, but I was so oversaturated with them that over time I was just like, I've had enough. It's just not for me. Looking back, is there any plays that you did that immediately come to mind, like this is my favorite, or this was the worst, I would never be a part of this ever again? Anything that pops right up to you?
Well, certainly the play that probably meant the most to me in terms of both the character and what I got to do and where I got to do it. There's a play called Louis Slotin Sonata that's about he was a Jewish Canadian who worked in our atomic bomb program in the Second World War. At one point, this Canadian man was America's chief armorer. That was his title, which I just think is really fascinating. And his job was to test the plutonium bomb cores that went into the atom bombs. And he was showing his replacement around the lab in Los Alamos, New Mexico, and accidentally exposed them all to fatal dose of radiation. Certainly it was fatal in his case. It took him 9 days to die. And the play is about what happens in his mind during those 9 days. And I got to do that. I got to do the premiere here in LA, and then Ensemble Studio Theater in New York decided that they wanted to mount it. And so they asked me to come out and reprise the role. And so I got to do that in New York as well. And that was a big deal to me. Also got to do it while we were there, thanks to a grant from a science foundation. We got to go to actually Los Alamos and read that play for the physicists there, some of whom were old enough to remember the guy that I was playing. And from a distance, I saw the building where the accident happened, and it was really fascinating. So that was a big deal to me. I could totally relate to what you're saying about musicals. I've never been a musical guy. The last musical I did was really fun, though. It was written by a group that calls themselves the Burglars of Ham. They're very funny Cal Arts people here in LA. And they wrote a musical about the father of behaviorism, John Brodus Watson. And it's a really weird, dark story. You've got lab rats that are singing with their tops of their skulls removed and this kind of thing. And so it was very abstract and darkly humorous. And my problem with most musicals is that they're so light and fluffy, and this wasn't really. So I really enjoyed doing that. That's been published since. I think there's been more than one production, but I was in the world premiere of that. So both of those plays, primarily Slotin Sonata. I'm trying to think of, have I had a particularly bad experience? I've been pretty lucky in terms of that. I haven't. There was a play. There was a play that I did in Seattle a million years ago, and it was supposedly call back to what we're saying earlier. There were some people who thought that it was an early uncredited Shakespeare play. It was a 15th century sort of kitchen sink drama, and anybody who had read Shakespeare knew that it was not a Shakespeare play. It didn't read that well, but I got cast in a production of it at the Empty Space in Seattle, and the fellow directing it was a very stodgy Brit by the name of John Russell Brown, and he wrote a lot of the introductory material in the Penguin Classic books that people buy, and we just did not get along. He was a very externalized director. It was very much about trappings and that kind of thing. And so an example of what did not go well was there was in the rehearsal process, there was a scene where another actor, where I'm being coerced into doing something violent and illegal. And another actor threw me up against the wall, and I would start talking, and he was supposed to interrupt me. Mm-hmm. Well, he because of where we were in the memorization process, I guess he consistently failed to interrupt me. Well, typically, what you do when you're supposed to be saying something and someone doesn't interrupt you is you keep talking, because that's how real life works. Mm-hmm. And one day. In notes, this fellow, John Russell Brown, the director, said, Bill, you realize, of course, that you're supposed to be interrupted. And I said, yeah, I do realize that, and I'm waiting to be interrupted. And to say, I'm trying to walk a careful path here because I don't want to throw the other actor under the bus, And John and this director said, well, don't you see, when you go on like that, you ruin the illusion that you're being interrupted. So I went to the other actor and I said, please do whatever you have to do to cut me off. It was just that, it was that kind of experience where I'm sure he was great at what he did. We came from two very different worlds, and we just didn't gel. So that was probably one of my worst experiences.
Well, at least it's not the material, and at least shows that you have a love for the material that you're given, even if it is not an authentic piece, like you were saying, or an authentic Shakespearean piece, if that's the right way to word that. But what an interesting bit of direction. Wow. That's
right.
That's very interesting, to say the least. I've got like one or two more questions that I'll throw your way, and then we'll shift gears over to the Moral Orel stuff. And I have to just fit in this joke because I can't help myself. In the film Book of Stars, you play a hospital doctor who is visibly upset with Penny after her lack of paying attention to Mary's collapsed lung. I needed to ask, is it normal protocol for a doctor to make it a priority to make family members feel guilt before the possible neglect that they're addressing a serious medical issue? Like, which one is it, Bill? Do we blame Penny, or do we focus on the dying child?
Those conditions can change very rapidly.
Penny.
Is this the sister?
Where is she? Can I see her?
Yes, for a short time only. She has a collapsed lung. Have you not been monitoring her condition?
Please, can I just see her?
Well, they didn't want me to blame Penny very much because they kept going back and saying, do less, do less, do less. So by the time they took it and moved on, I felt like I was basically just saying words. And to that point, I've actually never seen that scene. I've never watched that because I just remember it as being less than a pleasant experience.
I've got a small little David Tuber section here because I touched down on him, and I was like, I had a few questions for him, and we spoke about him in great lengths in our last interview. And I know our time is a little bit short today, so we can't, gush, is that the right word? Gush about David Tuber for too long here. But he did have a question, and then I also wanted to ask you about something else. His question was, what cartoons did Bill enjoy or enjoys, and if any of them inspired the voice of Reverend Putty?
Oh, wow. First of all, love Dave Tuber. Like, how can you not? Super talented guy, super nice guy, great energy to be around. He's just a wonderful human being. The classics were really, when I was a kid, I was watching Bugs Bunny. It had aired originally, like, the original Bugs Bunny classics were like 30 years before my time, but that they were still out there and around just like they are today. And so I would watch that when I was a kid growing up. In fact, I remember there was something that, a phrase that came from those cartoons that I can remember. I must have used it at the wrong moment because I remember my mother saying, if I hear that again, you're not going to watch those cartoons anymore. So I think that generally, you look at that kind of sardonic wit, whether it's Bugs Bunny, Alan Alda in MASH, I think a lot of that kind of influenced my own personal sense of humor. Mm-hmm. And so that kind of wit always appealed to me. So I watched a lot of Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, Wile E. Coyote, all that kind of stuff. I also I was a big Star Trek geek, so I watched, there was a Star Trek animated series that was really fun for a while, and included some of the original cast member voices. So yeah, I kind of like the classic stuff. There was nothing that terribly unique about it, but it definitely informed who I am. And as far as the voice of Reverend Putty, I was just kind of trying to go for something kind of round and Midwestern. I actually thought a little bit about Jimmy Stewart when I was doing it. I didn't want to go that far. I didn't want to be like, oh, God works in mysterious ways, or when, but that kind of roundness and sort of even tone, like, oh, Orel, God's not mysterious. He works in one way. When you least expect it, he gets you. That kind of like just keeping the back of the mouth open and sort of not doing a whole lot of crazy vocal variety. It really, for me, felt more sort of geographical than anything else. Does that make sense?
It does. And coming from the Midwest, I can definitely hear that kind of warm kind of vibe to him, because even through his sarcasm, there is that comforting tone that he brings to the table. And it definitely isn't full Jimmy Stewart, where, like you said, he's almost shaking in his voice. Definitely not that far, but enough to where as soon as you say it, I can see how you pulled that in there, and I can definitely tell the parallel, no doubt.
That's cool. Thank you.
I know we can't say much about this next one because I'm pretty sure that it's still being pitched around town, but can you tell me anything about your time working on Clown Town, which is the yet to be aired David Tuber project that he's working on?
I could tell you that it was a blast. It was a long time ago. I am happy to hear that it's still being shopped around because it was really fun. I remember, I think I was the town mayor in that.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. But it was super fun. It was great to see Dave, to see Tuber in a position where he was orchestrating it and calling the shots. And that was a blast. I would pretty much. If somebody said, hey, I'm working on a new project, the only thing I can tell you about it is that Dave Tuber's involved, I'd be like, where do I sign? So, yeah, it was really fun. And I would love to see that someday.
I'm right there with you. I read the breakdown for the show, and it seems very interesting and a very funny approach. It's supposed to revolve around racism, using the ethnic nature of the clowns as as it's a launching pad, I guess you could say. And it sounds very interesting. He told me that you guys did recording at the East West Studios in California, which is pretty cool because apparently that is where California Dreamin' by the Mamas and Papas was recorded. So that's got it.
Yeah, there was a tremendous amount of history in that studio, and I remember that it was beautiful, and it had kind of an old Hollywood vibe. So yeah, just being a part of that, sometimes something like that will strike me, and I'll just be so grateful for my good fortune, to be recording at Warner Brothers and see that classic WB animation logo come up, that I've seen since I was a kid. Being a part of something like that meant so much to me when I was a child. And certainly there's a lot of entertainment history in Hollywood. And that studio was an example of that. And you really feel like you're following in some pretty magical footsteps.
That is awesome. That's awesome that you have an appreciation for that too. When we see so many different places become parking lots these days, it's nice to at least be able to still do work at some places that do hold a bit of history and are being preserved for, that very reason. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like working at the old Cartoon Network studio in Burbank, that's no longer there. And if you went to the back stairwell, there was all this amazing artwork that had been just drawn on the walls by brilliant animators for, a couple of decades. And yeah, it's a shame that's gone. But I also appreciate the fact that time moves on, and you gotta make way for the new things that are being done.
Yeah. Yes. Speaking of moving on, our time is only so long today, and I got a whole bunch of questions for you, but I'm going to have to save them for maybe a part 2, or technically a part 3, maybe one of these days. But I have to shift gears to Moral Oral. And the first thing that I will mention before we dive into some of these questions here is I actually got an update from the people who worked on the Let There Be Light project, who said that in March it's going to be available online for people in the Internet Archives. But I was curious, did you see this project that was worked on? Oh, it's probably not getting in focus. I'll have to put a picture on the screen. But did you see this at all?
Yes, they reached out and they sent me a copy of what they were working on. Um, I believe it's the same thing. I'd have to look, but I have definitely. Yeah, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
There's a bunch of different covers that they made for it. So it's possible that your cover looks. I think I got another cover here. Might look like something like this, or might have like a black cover on it.
Yes.
They made a whole bunch of
Yes.
different ones,
Yes.
but
So it is.
I was just
It's
curious.
beautiful. It's about.
Yeah, it's overwhelmingly cool to see how many people are still loving the show after all this time. And I am trying to bring that up to as many people as I can. But our team was able to do the afterword for it and add a few fun things to it. But the whole team was able to raise a couple $1,000s to give to different organizations. And it really went to a good cause and really shows how much people are still caring about the show after all this time. So I'm glad that you heard about it. And yeah, it's awesome.
I love the kind of people who seem to be Moral Oral fans, and maybe it's because it was primarily a show that derived its humor from mocking hypocrisy. So the people that tend to like that are themselves pretty genuine people. And I always really, really appreciate when somebody, I will be at a con and 9 people will come up and lose their minds over Rigby. And then one person will come up and be like, "Hey, Moral Oral." And I always love making that connection with somebody because those are real fans and they appreciate the deep cut.
Yeah, Moral Oral fans are definitely different. And that's one huge motivating factor for what we do is we try to be able to try to keep this little thing alive as much as we can because I think that those different people need to be able to relate with something. And there's not really much that holds a candle to what Moral Oral did. And I think those people are special and it's cool to know that it still resonates all this time. And I don't know if you can say the same thing for other Adult Swim shows. I always see online when people talk about their favorite Adult Swim shows, close to 20 years later, and Moral Oral is still on the top of it. And I'm so glad to see that because it's unlike any other show on the channel. And it might be similar in some ways, but it's its own beast. And I'm glad that it resonates. And I think that's mainly because the topics, whether you like them or not, are timeless. They're very, very human. And those things are not going to go away. And it's not to say that some of the other timeless stuff, timeless shows still couldn't resonate or don't resonate or do resonate. But I think the ones that Moral Oral tackles with is a lot closer and intimate to the human experience, whether that's good or bad, and it's good to know that people are still flocking onto it.
Absolutely agreed. And whenever something has that kind of appeal and that kind of longevity, I always like to throw the attention back on the writers because that's how you get that. I mean, yeah, you need somebody strong performing those parts, but it's the writing that elevates something from a fun stoner watch to something that stands the test of time, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You mentioned to me that your introduction to Moral Oral is all because of Scott, and I was curious, like, how did you and Scott meet each other?
I was doing theater here in LA, and at that time, Scott was dating a lovely and talented Greek woman by the name of Anastasia Basil, and she and I were in a show together, and Scott came to see the show, and for whatever reason, he liked my work, And we talked afterwards, and his sense of humor really appealed to me. And so we became friends, and we were hanging out together and spending time together. And then when it came time to, I knew about Moral Orel. I knew that he and Dino were pitching it. I think I'd met Dino at a party at Scott's place, Scott and Anastasia's place, and uh, I was aware of it tangentially, certainly as nothing that I would be involved in because I was primarily a stage and occasional on camera actor. And I was getting ready to go do a season of summer stock at my old college in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And that's when Scott called and said, "Hey, we've got this, you know about Moral Orel." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "Well, it's all first season's in the can." I said, "Well, congratulations, that's great. But we're not happy with one of the voices. And we were wondering if you would come in and read for it." And I thought that Scott was just throwing me a bone and being a good friend, and I really didn't have time to go do this. I was like, "Well, I'm getting ready to leave momentarily for Santa Fe, and I don't really have time to come read for it. But thank you, you know." And he actually kind of encouraged me and said, "The studio's 5 minutes away from where you live. Why don't you just come read for it?" And at that point, I felt like I'd be kind of a dick if I didn't. And so, yeah, I went over there, and I wasn't nervous at all because I knew there was no chance I was going to get in an animated show. That was just silly. And I wasn't nervous. So when Dino said, "Well, you've done VO before, right?" I was like, "Not really." It was just I wasn't trying to sell myself or be anything that I wasn't. And so I just had a good time with the audition. I was like, "This will be my one chance to play this role, so I'm going to go ahead and have a good time with it." And it was not the next day, but the day following that, Scott called and said, "The network really liked what you did, so you're Reverend Putty." And I went to the studio, and as I mentioned earlier, the whole first season was already recorded, and so it was just me and Scott and Dino. And I think Putty was in 9 of the first 10 episodes, either 8 or 9 of the first 10 episodes in season 1. And so I did that all at once in a 4-hour slot. And when I left, it was almost like I'd never done it at all. And so I went to Santa Fe and started rehearsal. And one day, all these checks showed up in the mail. And that was very nice. And then while I was still there, the day came that the premiere aired, and I saw heard my voice coming out of, pardon me, out of Reverend Putty, and it was surreal. And it continued to be. It's very strange when you're in one room and you hear your voice coming out of a TV in the other room, which has happened to be a couple of times. But yeah, it was just the weirdest happenstance that I ended up getting to be a part of that. And what I tell the young folks now is be prepared for success to look different entirely than you think it will. Be prepared for it to come at you from a direction that you didn't expect, and be ready to say yes to things that you never thought about doing, because that's how I end up talking to you in an interview today. Is I just took advantage of an opportunity I didn't see coming and got very lucky.
Well, the luck is all ours, but I completely understand what you're saying. That's very interesting. It reminds me of the same audition process that I can't remember the actor's name. I'll flash it up on screen right now. But the guy who plays Homelander on The Boys, I think his approach was almost the same way as his audition, where he was just kind of like, "I'm not really interested in doing a superhero thing, but my agents are basically making me do it." So I just kind of walked in and I was like walking on a cloud. Like I just had that confidence of like, I don't really care. But because I was able to do that, it made me give a delivery that was completely different, and I could bring a level of authenticity to the character and a sense of confidence that the character needed, opposed to what 90% of other people are probably doing in there, like, do they like me, and nervous and all on edge or something like that. So I really wonder on how much, and we probably don't know, or maybe we could figure it out, but I wonder how much of that influenced that delivery gave you that confidence of just going in there to be like,
Oh,
it is what it is. Like, who cares? You know what I mean? And just walked in like you were
definitely.
floating on a cloud.
I mean, as you probably know, the best work, the most interesting work, like with Anthony Starr, who plays Homelander, wonderful Kiwi actor who I literally can't imagine anyone else playing that role. Um, yeah, the best work comes from taking chances, and it's hard to take a chance when you feel like there's so much riding on it and you don't want to make a mistake. It's easy to not want to make a mistake more than you want to do something interesting. And when you don't want to make a mistake, you play it safe. And when you play it safe, you're like everybody else who walked into the room. And gosh, I just wasn't even thinking about it like that. I wasn't thinking of it as an actual opportunity. And so, yeah, it was just all fun, and it worked out the way it worked out.
I'd be really curious if those original recordings of the Rev were somewhere. And I wonder if, because the Rev has got this kind of sarcastic, almost just, I can't put my finger on it, but he's got this, he seems almost very insecure at times, but then also very secure with what he's doing at times. I wonder how much of that they just took from you and from that initial whatever and baked that into the character's mannerisms. I'm going to skip ahead. I've got so many questions for you today. I know I'm going to try to keep you as long as I can, but
Okay.
I had a question come in from Reddit where somebody said, um, Salyers did a lot of theater. So one cool thing that the animators said was that even though he was voice acting, they felt it was easy to animate for the Reverend because of his exaggerated theater style performing when delivering lines. So I wonder how much of that confidence from that first time maybe went into the writing aspects in the second season, or when they actually had you there working on stuff, on how much of that actually helped develop the character more. And I'd just be really curious to see if that was a really big influence, which I think that they would, like thinking about how the show was created. I would think so, but that's really cool to see that they leaned into that, at least in the animation department. You know what I mean?
Well, they did that even in the recordings. They would encourage me to treat the sermons like I was giving a sermon. So I would be standing in front of a music stand, but essentially, it's the same way. A lot of people are this way. If you spend time with voice actors, if you spend time in a booth with a lot of people, Sam Marin from Regular Show comes to mind. They're actually full body acting when they're doing the work. They're just being very careful to stay on axis for the microphone, right?
Mhm.
But certainly, I think the fact that the Reverend was often doing a public performance, i.e., he was in church, on Sundays, certainly played into my strengths. And I hadn't heard that, but it makes a lot of sense, and that tickles me.
I tried to ask them for a source for that because I was like, where did someone say that? Like, I'm curious because, a lot of people on the internet will just write whatever, but I was like,
Yeah.
even if it is just written whatever, that's an interesting thing. And even if that's what people got out of it, that's an interesting thing. But, um, regardless, is Moral Oral a show that you personally relate with?
Oh, yeah. I come from rural Oklahoma. That's where I was born and grew up, and I was raised Southern Baptist. So I'm, you might say that I suckled at the teat of religious hypocrisy. I certainly saw a lot of the same kind of things going on that you see in the show. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's funny that I've never been asked that before in that way, and for sure, it was all very relatable to me because I kind of came from that environment.
When you started to see the show become more serious, do you think that that influenced you to look at your role more seriously? Like, did that influence you in a different way? Or were you still, you think, coming from the same point of reference, I guess you would say?
I don't think it changed my point of reference that much because I had kind of always seen it that way. I mean, when you've got there's a perfect summation for me of Putty's character, which has nothing to do with my performance. It's that mug that he has that says, "I hate my boss," you know? Yeah, that mug.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's something very classic, almost neoclassical about Putty's uneasy relationship with his boss, who is God, or at least, Moralton's version of God. Um, I always had the feeling that Putty didn't necessarily know how God was going to take something, and that he was always kind of on pins and needles because of that, and that he had a very deep, righteous, almost pathological fear of God, and so that would come out in some of the things that he would say, particularly to Orel. Um, I kind of feel like as the show went on, they shifted the focus a little bit to all the ugliness that was going on underneath, and showed us more of that. But that was always kind of in the back of my mind. I was never. Um, I don't think I ever had a rosy idea of what Moralton was, the town and the people. Um, yeah, it often reminds me of there's a great quote. I don't remember whether it's H.L. Mencken. It was somebody like that who said, um, a good people will do good things and bad people will do bad things, but religion will make good people do bad things. And I kind of felt like that showed up in Moral Orel.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. You can see a lot of different characters embodying that exact quote. Um, and we see that all the time now. People still do that to this day. You know what I mean? Whether they're using politics in as the launch pad or religion or whatever it is. You know what I mean? There are certain things that just yeah, it'll definitely corrupt in many different ways. Um, Looking back at the show, do you have a favorite line or a favorite episode? Anything that pops out when you think of it right away?
Well, there were a couple of moments, a couple of things in episodes that really meant a lot to me, and the relationship between Putty and who we come to learn is his daughter was really that meant a lot to me. I really love that because they were such different people, and I think I think Stephanie was kind of almost Putty's redemption arc. Probably the moment that I remember more than anything is the final monologue. I was lucky enough to have the last words in the whole series, and they're about how things can eventually turn out well in spite of themselves, and it's for such a dark show that went to such dark places at times. It ends on a really lovely note for Orel and for his eventual family, and being able to talk about that at the very end of the series is one of my favorite memories and favorite experiences.
But I guess I'll ask a double question here is which is how did you feel about the ending, all things considered, and how did you hear about the show getting canceled?
Well, I thought that the show ended well too soon. And I admire the fact. I know that Dino had more stuff in mind. I know that he wanted to explore the arc of Oral's relationship with his grandfather, and I think that would have been really interesting. So I know that there were storylines that didn't get realized. As far as as you know, I'm trying to remember how I found out. Usually in these situations, you kind of know before you know, and I'm sure that you get the sense of that. Um, I don't recall it coming as a surprise per se. I do recall it being a disappointment and coming sooner than I hoped. Um, I'm sure it was something that I learned at work rather than being notified by my agent. I probably found out from Dino. Um, so I will always feel like there was room to explore further. But that said, I really admired how the writing reached a natural conclusion given the time that we had.
Yeah, seeing so many different shows just get the axe and things just end abruptly, or having a weird, I don't know, ambiguous ending that has nothing. It was nice to see them at least try to put a little bow at the end there,
Yeah,
even if
I
they
can't
could
watch
take it.
those. I can't watch those shows. When I and particularly if you like interesting stuff that isn't mainstream, on numerous occasions now, I've seen a show that has been canceled, and I want to start watching it, and then I find out that they didn't write it to an end, and I was like, I'm not even going to bother. I'm not even, I don't want to invest the time in a story that's not going to be resolved. That just doesn't appeal to me.
I'm a huge fan of Fincher's Mindhunter, and
Oh,
since that show got canceled, obviously people didn't know at the time, and they totally dropped the ball, and it just an unbelievably fantastic show from every single approach for it. But I've met a couple people that I talked to about different films when I'm like, if we're talking about a Fincher film or something, I'll be like, do you ever watch Mindhunter? And they're like, you know what? I know that they canceled it, so I haven't jumped in, and I'm like. I get it. I get where you're coming from, and it seems like a wasted investment. But I always bring up Mindhunter, where I'm like, it'll just piss you off because it's so good. Like, even if it is short lived, it is so good. It's ridiculous.
absolutely agreed. Have you heard that they're talking about wrapping it up with a feature?
Yeah, Holt said something, I think, where he might have stepped on a few different toes, but yeah, he said something about the fact that they're thinking about doing like three shorter ones. It might be like three super long episodes or something like that, or doing like a featurette or something of the sort, which would be really interesting. I don't know if you've ever read the book before. They end it in an interesting way. It's a great read. Douglas is out of his mind, but yeah, it would be really interesting to see where they go with it, and just to tie it off, and at least try to see what happened with all the vignettes of the BTK killer. But I think that was one thing
Yes.
that people thought. I mean, they wanted to see what happened to what's the kid, David, I think is his name.
Yeah.
And I mean, all the storylines, they'd like to see what happened. But I think the build up for the BTK storylines to go nowhere, I think people were just like, what is the point of all this? Like, and so
Yeah.
that would be really interesting to see like where that goes. No doubt.
So funny. I was going to tell you that I arrived in Seattle. I got off when I was a young man. I was in Seattle for 10 years, and I got off the road doing a tour, and I landed in Seattle with my girlfriend at that time. And the week that I got there, Florida executed Ted Bundy. And of course, Bundy's history was all over the Pacific Northwest. And
Mhm.
then, later you had the Green River serial killer. And I, probably because of where I was, just geographically, I became fascinated with that whole thing. And I read Douglas's book back then. So I had 35 years ago. I read Mindhunter. Um, there's another fun series um, in a completely different way that deals with all that was by the same people who created X-Files, and it's called Millennium.
Hmm.
Have you ever heard of it?
I don't think so.
It's a trip. It's Lance Henriksen playing a profiler for the FBI. There was that period, because of because of Mindhunter and because of John Douglas and who was the psychologist that interviewed all those Park Dietz? Those guys kind of rose up and of course Silence of the Lambs. The profiling kind of came to the forefront, and then there were all these series that tried to take advantage of it, and Millennium was one of those, and it was just dark, trippy fun. But I'm a huge Lance Henriksen fan, so that really appealed to me too.
Interesting. That is really interesting. You're right, though. I mean that there was a little bit for a while there where the whole profiling kind of became the hero, the sellable thing. So there was a lot of different films, a lot of different shows, and that went on for quite some time. I mean,
yeah,
you've got things from, Copycat all the way to The Bone Collector to just all different types of films, dancing around that subject. I know you have to go soon. It's almost 2:30, so I'm gonna regretfully have to jump over a bunch of questions here, but I'll try to get to a wrap-up point here. Speaking of Orel's grandfather, you were a part of Beforel Orel, and I was curious was that an instant yes when they asked you to be a part of that?
Yeah, still would be today. I think you're aware of this already. I don't remember if we spoke about it before or not, but Dino is supposedly working on a spec script, and of course we don't know if that's going to happen because the thing with a spec script is you write it and you hope somebody will buy it. But I revisited it back then without a second thought, and I would do that again just because I think the material is so strong, and to this day, it's so unique.
Did they ever tell you that that was an attempt for them to try to do a reboot, or did they just tell you that that was like a one-off?
It was presented to me as a one-off. Yeah,
That's
what huh?
I was going to say we've actually heard both, that some people were like it's a one-off, and then other people were like no, this, depending on how this was, it would give us a chance to redo it again. So that's interesting.
Well, I kind of think that's always the case. I kind of think I'm I don't think of myself as being particularly cynical about the business, but I am realistic about it. And let me put it this way: if I was involving people in a one-off like that of a project that I'd done before, I would tell everyone that it was a one-off and hope that it was a reboot. Do you know what I mean? Because nobody's gonna walk away from money on the table. So if something like that happened and there was enough of a popular groundswell, then I think that it naturally leads to a reboot because people want to make money.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Also, I think it might mess with them psychologically if they were walking in just doing a one-off versus being like, oh, well, we're gonna have more here. I think that could definitely change the dynamic and how they would approach the work day to day. You know what I mean?
Agreed. Yeah.
Did you by chance keep any mementos or steal anything from the set while you were at when you were on the show?
I did not. However, when we were all leaving, I was lucky enough to be gifted some pretty cool stuff. I mentioned to you that I have a Reverend Putty.
You did.
Well, I was surprised. I apparently have two Reverend Putties.
Oh,
so this is going to work about as well as when you tried to show me the book cover. But this is this was out in my studio. This is bubble wrap, and on the bubble wrap there is blue tape that says "Head to go on Young Putty from Help, Bill Salyers." And they're two separate pieces of tape, so I think one came after the other. But this is there's a rev for you right there.
Oh, very nice.
And then I also have.
You got a nice smile. I got this one. He looks a little bit angry in this one.
Oh yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of jealous. I think I remember that way more. And then Scott presented me with this. This is it's you're not gonna be able to see it, are you? It's that's just lovely. Yeah, that's a little better.
Oh no, we see it. Yeah.
it's in a wooden presentation case,
Oh,
and you
wow.
probably there's facial features there on a little card,
Oh, very cool. I
and
I'll ask you to send me a photo of it or something later on. We'll splice that in the video.
and somewhere I seem to have accidentally lost it, and I hope it turns up. There's a little stick of wax that they use to attach those features to the face that came with it as well.
Very
So
cool.
yeah, and I have this sort of gift for being able to destroy and or lose things. And so I very like this is the most I've interacted with that since it was given to me.
Well, hopefully now that you busted it out, you can put it in the office or something like that because
Yeah.
that wood box is a pretty cool display piece. There's no doubt about that. And also those mouths are have become a very, very rare item to find these days. So that's very cool that you
Oh,
have a few of those. That's awesome.
that's yeah.
Um, okay, I know our time is almost up, but if I have to ask one final question for today, unless you
Yeah.
are pressed for more time, then I'll re-edit this around. But I would be I'd feel bad if I didn't ask this question. I want to know what your thoughts are on the the Putty Room from Kayla, who is the number one Reverend Putty fan. I'm curious your thoughts on that, which right now on the screen we've got some pictures of her room. And to say that she is the number one Reverend Putty fan is probably that doesn't give her enough credit. And I was just curious what you think of that.
I was stunned. Something that you hear at cons all the time from people, regardless of what franchise they're fans of, is they'll say, "I'm your number one fan." And so you get used to going, "Oh, that's great. Thank you." Kayla was the first person that I thought, "Oh, she's the number one fan for Reverend Putty." Uh, I was blown away. That's something that you have to get used to is having that kind of impact on people's lives. And it's wild, whether it's someone tattooing your character on their body or up to and including your signature. I've had people say, "I want you to sign my arm because I'm going to get it tattooed." Um, but Kayla's commitment is that's a cut above. I think Kayla could pretty much do the show herself from her room if she wanted to.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. She actually just made her own prop. I don't know if you saw that, but
I did.
she did a wonderful job. Just a wonderful
Yeah.
job.
If she ever wants to get into that line of work, I think she has the skills and the patience. So she's really impressive.
Absolutely. She definitely takes it to 10, as they say, but it's got to feel really cool to see somebody just be so impactful by a piece of art that you made. And I know you meet people
Yeah,
all the time. I know you do cons, and you're constantly talking to fans and meeting people who have loved your work over uh, the span of a giant career. But to see somebody really connect with something like that it's got to be remarkable.
absolutely. And one of the things I enjoy about animation is that you're never tempted in a way that I think movie stars are to feel like it's all about you because you know that you are it's never all about you even if you are a movie star, but you know that there's a whole team and tons of people behind the scenes that you've never even met that go into making that character who that character is. And so, when I think about somebody like Kayla and how much Reverend Putty spoke to her, I think that's huge kudos to people like Dino and Scott and Tuber and everybody who was a part of creating that character. And I just feel very fortunate to have been a part of it myself.
That is awesome, man. That is that's really cool stuff. And that's awesome that you embrace that and yeah, that's really great. I know some people might feel differently about it, but that's really awesome. And I know awesome from her perspective. I've spoken to her a bunch and she's just happy to be a fly on the wall and to know that you think what she does is pretty cool. So that's cool. But speaking of autographs, I should plug your Streamly and your Cameo. We'll put links in the description below. So anyone who's looking to have Reverend Putty tell you about how sinful you are or any of his characters, check out his Cameo. Everything's in the description below. And he should be doing Streamly, so you can get some awesome autographs like this one that we got here. I don't know if it'll come through because our cameras are not working with us today, but we had Bill do one for me. It says Justin on there, and we got it here in the collection. So this is a lovely one. They always come with a COA too, which is really great. So guys, definitely check that out. Show them some love. And I say this in a laughing way, but again, I really, really appreciate you doing this again. I know that I could sit here and I've got probably like another 50 questions for you. So maybe we'll have to bug you to do this a third time sometime. Let's just hope that when we press stop, the recording is good and people will actually see this. But I just wanted to say thank you so much again for making the time and answering questions and being as accommodating as you have been. I really can't thank you enough. So hopefully I can find some way to repay you and just thank you again for the time, man. I really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Justin. It was great chatting with you both times.
Cool. Well, let's press stop and fingers crossed. And I'll talk to you soon and enjoy your day, man.
All right, brother. Back at you.
All right. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.
The end. Amen. Nah, who am I kidding? The end.
Hot dog!